Temba Jumden, the Shenshima, Joshua Mayanda, Zobe Sanje, Ribana, Shazon, Demon, the Varish, Jidin Jamba, Jibon, the Vakano, Jubana, Pada Menam Jedemba, Sanje, Jumden, the Bridge, Shaja Dubala, Chazano, Chadu, Jasus, Temba Jumden, the Shenshima, Joshua Mayanda, Zobe Sanje, Ribana, Shazon, Demon, the Varish, Jidin Jamba, Jibon, the Vakano, Jubana, Pada Menam Jedemba, Sanje, Jumden, the Bridge. Shaja Dubala, Chazano, Chadu, Jasus, Demba Jumden, the Shenshima, Joshua Mayanda, Ribana, Shazon, Demon, the Varish, Jidin Jamba, Kalo Juvala, Lana, Menam Jedem. Sanjay Jumden, the Bejawa, Shaja Kubala, Shas, Chedo Jazo, Kanze Kanya, Sajan, the Nakamba, Dubran, Bandin Jedin, the Nacho, Tezeke by Jala Chala, Zelo, Nanda Kuma, Chodo, Yeshijazo, Sajan, Hombonda, Chaba Jedin, Bombo Shoni, Jala Chala, Senjon, the Martin, Sendor Dawa Jala Chala, Nyame Jenjen Jala Cha Bombo Tuji Tamje Jembe Dembo Sonami Yende the Jin Jala Cha Taben de Jatu Given Yazon de Dreji Jibu Tanamacho Shindiri Jala Cha Trene Treva Lava Tala Rabune Shingya Tamba Gendian Lanya Cha Diva Chiyan Gava Bezon Sabaji Ranges and Tene Sanje Dembani Kamara Rimam Jomase Vachurata Melmoloda Decision Madeta Sonam Dia Tamjesi Quantum Nature Jeta Gada Nata Shira Latu Sibezon and Jova Deva
To the
teacher, blessed for destroyer,
completely perfected,
fully
perfect in knowledge and in good conduct,
Sugata, the Lord of
the world,
supreme
supreme
God,
guide of these to be gained, teacher of gods and humans, you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror,
the scepter
Lord
of
of the
protection,
shock and land, I prostrate in all reason, grow for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, super and over the world, supreme guide of beings to be gained, teacher of gods and humans, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer of the shock of land, I prostrate, make offering, grow for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata and over the world, supreme guide of beings to be gained, teacher of gods and humans, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you faced ourselves, pride, this bed, ashes and cream in this world. To you who are life, then I prostrate. With pure bodies, formed supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, famed and blazed in the three worlds. Winner of the best, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate, the three worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the teacher having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean. To you, the one God, the dustness I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtue which frees one from the lower elements, the one path, the sublime to reality to that dharma which pacifies I prostrate. those who are liberated and who also show the path of liberation, those who feel qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha, a star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditions, things as such. Through these merely things, sentient beings attain the rank of all things, subdue the four faults, and be delivered from the ocean of suffering, of aging, sickness, and death.
Sanji Shano, Sanji Shano, Chanchu Bado, Dane Jazu, Nagin Jazo, Jeva Sono, Jola Benji, Sanji Rubu, Sanji Shano, Chanchu Bado, Dane Jazu, Nagin Jazo, Jeva Sono, Jola Benji, Sanji Rubu, Sanji Shano, Chanchu Bado, Dane Jazu, Nagin Jazo, Jeva Sono, Jola Benji, Sanji Rubu,
I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Pumea, Pumolation, Medella, Pumea, the Dishin Dishinshaba Kashi, Keta Sanja Pumbola, Tena Rashili, Rashin and the Kamera, the Shingola, Kashi Shinjo, the Tanya, Kashi Danim, the Cheta, the Shinshawa, Keta Rashi, Shimu, Rashid on the Shangwa, the model, the Shisha, the Kong, Keta Pumbo, Madam, the Shinshaba Gaya. Tena Tadu Denji, Tena, the Pumbo, Madam, the Shinshaba Gaya, Kashi Madin, the Tenish, and Yavala, Yaval, never Jimmy. Yawa lemba meba ye dishin shiba jen, namba mende zeye chida kashi de nye shinye, mebe dishin shiba de nyawa lemba chida da, kashi nyawa lamba de tina rashi le yo. Daga mo le kama be dishin mo le yere gen, tedra nyala nyala namba gunje tongba nye, tongbe dishin shiba chida bando tongba nye, tongwa shinje me chishi, medon shinje me chishi, nida nimi me chata tabe tundo chiba chi, tada meda la suje shiva de la kama nye, tada tame la suje shiva de la kama nye, kange dishin shiyo jen zimbo tubu sonjo pa tene nyangen de wame meche nando toba chi. Rangshin jen de tonde de sanje nyangen tene de yodo shiba me doje samba taba nimi je. Kanda sanje chunde je seba me lo tu shiba, chobe nyamba teko je dishin shiba tome. Dishin shiba rangshin ba tene ronde rangshin je dishin shiba rangshin. Ndowan diye rangshin me dishin shiba taba she shiba, rado shiba nishu nyeba wo. Kange ngogo tenjo na ngo wame ba nye dozo, yishi nyame se me je, peme tena chance lo. Yeah, I think page 50. Yeah, last time we were talking about the three kind of compassions. We already discussed on the compassions may focus on the sentient beings. The compassions may focus on the sentient beings. Compassions with phenomenal reality. Compassion with no reference. Non-referential compassion. Phenomenal reality compassion, and compassions kind of focusing on the mere sentient beings. So here the term that we use, mere sentient beings, mere phenomenal reality, mere non-referentials. So the mere means, so there's one kind of compassion that is focusing on the sentient beings without having another mind, right? Another wisdom that is knowing the characteristic of impermanence of the sentient beings, without realization of impermanence of the sentient beings, without realization of the emptiness of the sentient beings, mere focus on the sentient being, and about the 12 links of the dependent origin, how sentient being kind of cycles in samsara through the 12 links of dependent originations. So now the meditation is contemplating on the 12 links of dependent originations. The thing is, the meditating on the 12 links of dependent originations also practice in Shavaka practitioners and the Pratika Buddha practitioners and the Bodhisattvas. So Shavaka and the Pratika Buddha meditate on 12 links of dependent originations for generating the genuine renunciation, right? So seeking for possibility kind of the liberation, right? Seeking for knowing the possibility of the liberations. So renunciations, I think the renunciation means knowing, perfectly understanding how sentient beings cycling in the samsara, and what is the core and the root of this kind of cyclic existence. So that really generates the renunciations, because sees the suffering in the samsara, and also sees the possibility of free from samsara. So renunciation, that's why you say, and then many texts it says, renounce from, renounce to, and renunciations. Renounce from the cyclic existence, renounce to the liberations, and that very desire, the spontaneous desire that wanting to free from cyclic existence is the renunciation. So it's still, you say, the desire is still there. Without desire, no movement. Right? So and that, Sarvaka and the Pratika Buddha all meditate on 12 links to independent originations. Now, what is the additional for the Bodhisattvas generating compassion through meditating on the 12 links to independent originations? What is the additional kind of complementary factory with 12 links in order for generate the compassion, the great compassion? Because the 12 links is common practice, right? Bodhisattva, Shavaka, and Pratika Buddha. So then there says the complementary factors with this 12 links and independent origination is the endearment towards sentient beings, unbearable feeling towards the sentient beings. Deep regard to the sentient beings. So these. Last Sunday we talked about how we develop this kind of sense of endearment towards the other sentient beings. So the two approach. There's a two approach. One is believing that every sentient beings had been my mothers, right? Their parents, their loved ones, because the countless of the life, many lives, right? So previous life, this life, next life, and then the beginningless. So with believing in the countless life, and we can how to say, consider the every sentient beings once they had been our parents, brothers, sisters. So every sentient beings become one's own mother, and that being they've been kind to you, right? And not one time, 100 times, 1,000 times, and repaying their kindness. And then the how say, every sentient being had my mother. They've been kind to me. I have to repay their kindness. And the fourth is the unbearable feeling, or sometimes they use lovely love. As sentient beings is more favorable to you, more dear to you, right? So after having developed the sense of endearment towards sentient beings, then taking a pledge, that promise that I will be the one who will free every sentient being from the suffering. So then, after that, and then great compassion. So every sentient being had been my mother, they've been kind to me, repay their kindness, lovely love, and taking responsible, and then great compassion. And sixth cause, as a result, one effect is then there is a kind of aspirations, the genuine, spontaneous aspiration to become the Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So in this way, developing sense of endearment towards the other sentient beings. So that's the one approach which is mentioned in 400 stanzas Ayadeva, and the Asangas text, and this also pretty much explained in a great Kamalashila, the learned Kamalashila, and then the Chandragomin. Chandragomin is one of the in Hindi they call Avalokiteshvara Bhakt, means devotee, so much devoted towards the Avalokiteshvara, a lot of compassion. So he every day he can have a conversation with Avalokiteshvara. He can receive everyday teaching from the Avalokiteshvara. So that's Chandragomini. Chandragomi is a lay person, great practitioners, a great compassionate one, and very knowledgeable. So he's the lay person. He, in Nalanda, during the Chandrakirti was the abbot in Nalanda monasteries. So Chandragumi came to the Nalanda, and he challenged Chandrakirti that he could debate with him. So in order to show that the kind of he is willing to challenge, and he went to the Chandrakirtis while he was giving teaching. He just stood there, standing up. Means if you are show respect, you have to sit down and listen. Right? And he stand all during the teaching. So the Chandrakirti realized the indication that he wanted to have a conversation, debate with him. And after the teaching, Chandrakirti sent the attendant. So who is that man? Just standing there. So, and what is his name? What he knows, right? So he sent one monk and one that monks asked the Chandrakirti, what is your name? What do you know? So, people call me Chandrakirti. And he said, I know, ornament of the, ornament of knowledge. That means he knows all sutra. So I know Manjushri root texts. So that means he knows all the Tantrayanas. So he was simply saying, I know these two texts. So and Chandrakirti already know this was a great scholar. And Chandrakirti wants to invite him in the monastery and in his room. So Chandrakirti sent, at that time the chariot, horse chariot, to invite him, to show him respect. And Chandrakirti, the Chandrakirti says, I'm a layperson and I cannot really kind of sit there and the monks drag the chariot. And Chandrakirti says, it's okay, you can just hold Manjushri statue on your lap. So we'll invite Manjushri. So he was invited in the monastery by the monks. So holding the Manjushri statue on his lap. So actually this kind of invitation or kind of this for him, Chandrakirti. So Chandrakirti has this kind of direct vision of the Avalokiteshvara. So every morning, Chandrakirti goes to Chandrakirti's room and debate with him. And like the evening around had been finished. And Chandrakirti almost defeated many times. And Chandrakirti says, I'll come tomorrow. And he will just go, tomorrow you come and debate. When almost he got defeated, and he just stand up, raise up, say, I'll come next day. So he kept doing that. And Chandrakirti was wondering, who is helping this guy? So every time he's come, he's smarter and smarter. So kind of Chandrakirti kind of sneakily, he sneak into his room what he's doing. So Chandrakirti has our Avalokiteshvara statue. So morning, the Avalokiteshvara statue become live, and giving him 3 lessons. So Avalokiteshvara said, Chandrakirti will say this, and you answer this. Chief said this, you answer this. So then Chandrakirti opens the door, kind of immediately. He says, Papa, Arya means kind of referring to the Avalokiteshvara with respect. Arya is the Papa. Don't discriminate. So I'm also your. So, and then that Chandrakirti, the Chandrakirti statue, Avalokiteshvara, and from that on, the statue, fingers always like this. He just kind of, what do you call, frozen. When the Chandrakirti came in the room, statue just frozen. And then he has this kind of statue with pointing, finger pointing. So the Chandrakirti, Chandrakirti is the great scholar. So his approach of generating compassion through 6 cause and 1 effect. 6 cause and 1 effect. We all know, right? 6 cause and 1 effect. Ever since we had my mother, they've been kind to me, repay their kindness, and the love, and then responsible, taking responsible, and then compassions as a result, and bodhicitta, or enlightenment, right? Enlightened mind. So this was kind of very largely practiced by many of those bodhisattvas, the great bodhisattvas. Now, another approach of generating sense of endearment towards the sentient being is through interdependencies, through the dependent arising. So dependent arising. So I think it's the one, because the kind of like exercise on the self-cherishing, kind of enlarging that the self-cherishing and like expanding it for limitlessly. So here there was self and self-cherishing. The self-cherishing follows the grasping of self. Wherever there's a self-cherishing goes, right? So this is what we do, kind of, because of the grasping of self and so much attached to the self, and so and then there's the physical, the actions, kind of verbal actions, like all to guard that self, to protect that self, right? So like, I think it's like ordinarily everybody, their verbal actions, their physical actions, so all indicates, and they always defend yourself or protect yourself, and praise yourself, right? And sometimes you need to look down on others, right? You do for protecting yourself, and you fight with others for protecting yourself, right? So you, so there's a self-cherishing and self-grasping is like, like two twins, or you say king or the ministers, or master and his servant. Self-grasping is like a master, self-cherishing is the servant that he served, right? He served for this grasping self. So Shantidevas and the Chandrakirti, and then Nagarjuna, so their idea is, so first you have to know how this self really exists. Self, right? Self is, the first to know is self is the designations. It is the impositional phenomena, right? Impositional phenomena that imposes depending upon the body, feeling, and then discrimination awareness and the mental perceptions, and the mental formation and the perception, 6 perceptions: eye consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, and mental consciousness. So, and then feeling, right? And then discrimination awareness, and then faith, anger, attachment, faith, and then you can say all the mental factors, other than feeling and discrimination awareness, all in the category of mental formations. So every time the viewing the self, viewing the self through having seen your body, viewing the self having experiencing your feeling, viewing the self through through the your discrimination awareness, and having seen your body, and so they always view the self, right,
by depending on the 5 aggregates. So if the self always remain within the 5 aggregates, this self-cherishing becomes so, becomes so aggressive, because that myself is not really expendable. It's very small. It becomes too small. So the self-cherishing I is too staring at the 5 aggregates. So sometimes people use the example like that 2 shopkeepers. One shopkeeper has few things, just few products in the store to sell, and he has to stay there from the morning, right, 8 o'clock until night. So in the front he has 2-3 products to sell, and he gets more tired. Now another shopkeeper, he has so many, and he gets excited meeting with many people, comes and communicating with people and looking at many things. So the person, the shopkeeper, has many product and very small kind of small things to protect. And then so that also kind of sometime to save or to protect that also, this kind of shopkeeper with small product and has more worry. If someone steal one thing, he becomes too little. And the shopkeeper has many, and if something, 2-3 things, even 10 products missing, there's not much worry. So in this way, viewing the self, one who is viewing the self, seeing the self only with body, feeling, discrimination awareness, mental formations. And then with self-cherishing also very tired and very tense. So this is how the Nagarjuna, they see that. And how can I really kind of enlarge that self? So like a shopkeeper with many products, he enlarged himself in many objects. Right? Like a businessman who has many stores in different states and different countries. Maybe one, so here the exchanging self to the other. This thing. This Bodhisattva that what they think is my happiness is due to benefiting other, my suffering is due to harming other. So the others, the sentient beings, are the source of my happiness. That's the field that I grow happiness. If I like happiness, I have to like the field where I grow happiness. The sentient beings are the field for me as a farmer to grow happiness. So I should have same kind of regard. Like if I like happiness, I should like the sentient beings. So since you think you kind of expanding your existing self with every sentient beings. These are all my sentient beings, right? So these are all my sentient beings. These are all the responsible, or these are all filled for me to improve my perfectional generosity, my perfectional patience, morality, concentration, wisdom, right? With sentient beings, without, there's nothing I can achieve, I can obtain any good quality in this life. Right? So, and enlightenment is, even in this life, even in this, human being, the one individual life, someone who has no sense of concern for others, that individual never will be experiencing happiness. Right? So not just kind of enlightenment, even the life, everyday life, right? Who has no sense of caring for others. He can be, individual can be happy, small happy, because if he expends a sense of care for his pet, there's some happiness, right? Petting the right cat or dog, and he care for neighbors, friends, relatives, and communities, country, human beings, and more happier and happier. So, so this individual thinking that, so although self is unfindable within the five aggregates, it is absence in this body, absence in this feeling, absence in this discrimination awareness, absence in the eye conscious, nose conscious, the tongue conscious, every five aggregates, absence of self, absence of the self person, and equally other sentient beings, their five aggregates, also the devoid of the devoid of self of the person. So equally absence, but so by depending on the body, I could exist in the face of thought, right? As sometimes short, tall, weak, strong. So in a similar way, why not I can be kind of exist or manifest in the face of thought by looking at others' body, others' pain, others' joy, others' knowledge, others' success. So you can be happier by seeing others' success. You can be happier by kind of knowing someone's knowledge. So if I can dependently arises from this body, why not I can dependently arises from my shoes? Why not I cannot dependently arises from by depending on my car, my house, my friend, right? So why not I would dependently arising from others' pain, others' joy? So then this, once you are kind of train the mind or convince the mind that this is how I exist, it is not necessarily always arises by depending upon this only five aggregates. Right? So then this will impact on the self-cherishing. Now, self-cherishing is before cherish only five aggregates, five aggregates. Oh, now this cherishing goes and cherishing every phenomena, every sentient beings, every happiness of the sentient being, every pain of the sentient beings. So this is Nagarjuna, and through that way you can generate sense of endearment towards sentient beings. So you find sentient beings sometimes is more precious than the Buddha, more precious than your own kind of future Buddha, because this is benefiting to you every day. So yeah.
What happens if you're dealing with a person whose mind is filled with harm, and they get great pleasure out of their powerful and harming other people? How do you how do you derive happiness from that if we're expanding to include everyone? How do we do that in such a situation? This person gets a sense of satisfaction from lording over other people and putting other people down and harming other people. So how do we apply this to such a person?
So are you talking about how that individual your question is how yourself, right?
Yeah, well, we're expanding so that.
Or your question is
other people's happiness, other people's suffering, right? And we're relating that to our own identity. So it's not just our own identity. So if one follows this approach and deals with a very arrogant, cruel person, then we say, well, our satisfaction relates to that person's satisfaction in harming others. So there's something there I don't quite understand. It's easy to do. It's easy to do with ordinary persons.
Now this is kind of the practice, because it's very wisely being selfish, because I wanted to be happy. I do not want pain. So the happiness is drive through cherishing other, right? How say, kind of respecting, kind of sense of endearment towards others. Now your question may become here: how can I develop endearment towards individual who is only thinking and taking satisfactions or harming others? How can I include him in my sense of endearment?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So endearment is not necessarily always good story, good news. So unbearable feelings, mother who cherish kind of sense of endearment towards her children, is not necessary. Even children does the bad things or good things, she always care. So never lose the sense of care for the children who kind of step in the wrong direction. So I think there is no reason to lose the endearment towards the individual who is kind of taking satisfaction by kind of wrongdoing things, harming others. And also, and now the question is, it's just by wrongdoing, it's not really kind of, it's not the, it's not the reason, it's not the kind of, that you should lose the sense of endearment towards that individual because she is doing wrong thing. So, like mother never lose the sense of cherishing, sense of endearment to her children. And then the second becomes, because every time you the kind of deep in your mind, what makes you think that sense of endearment towards all sentient being is the only way to to gain more satisfactions or gratifications, because you do not want pain, you do not want unpleasant, you want always pleasant and happy. Now, so to be pleasant, how can I be pleasant with someone who is very negative. So here, sometimes go with Ved Puran. And Ved Puran is very useful at the time. So you think about the stories, the Ramayana stories, right? One who's very arrogant, right? He has knowledge, he has a skill, and he's always arrogant, and always to show his arrogant power and to defeat others, to do many bad things, right? So this story shows teaching you, right? Teaching you not to, so I think this kind of protecting you or teaching you not to go on, right? I think it's like not to develop a sense of pride or the kind of diluted pride on your knowledge, your skill, your quality, your knowledge, because this person is showing the example to you, right? It's just all this started from by birth or when he was in the school, and he didn't really like those people, he himself, right? When he sees the people with arrogant and very, harmful people, he himself didn't like. He started from liking, right, kind of his knowledge, his skill, liking people to praise him, liking the fame. So because of this attachment, make him this person. So this person in front of you teaches you, don't get excited about your knowledge, your skill, and your kind of the qualities. So you have to think the quality that you're going to gain, or the skill, or the knowledge, are supposed to be limitless, right? If you desire for your knowledge to be limitless, you won't generate the kind of take pride on your knowledge. So I think pride here, sometimes it's a little bit different, to be proud. So you always think that being proud is not a bad thing. And pride is, so proud is the adjective, right? Adjective. The pride is a noun. So the noun is not good. Adjective is good. So this is how we kind of, if the noun is not good, why the adjective is bad? Good, right? So people have this kind of, you say, well, sometimes they say, I'm proud of you. So that means you, so you appreciate someone's deeds, good deeds. And then don't be, he has a lot of pride. So then people say that means it's negative. People see the negative things, right? So why with the kind of the person with the noun of the pride is negative noun with the person with adjective of proud is kind of good thing. So I think this trying to kind of, this is trying to explain the haughty, the haughtiness and the proud. The haughtiness means you feel, you feel full of yourself, right? You're full of yourself with knowledge, skill, right? So that means you don't really, you don't desire further the kind of improvement. You just stop there. You don't want to go further. You don't want to improve further. The haughtiness. So the haughtiness is taking a taste, having a taste of your quality, your skill or quality, and you are very attached to it. So that really stops you to improve yourself. So all these bad people and who loves fame and power they have no intention to be like that. So because of their attachment towards kind of quality, the fame, right? I think they are not, you see, that's why they have to change their bed for many times every day. They have changed. They couldn't sleep. they have no good sleep, so they have to go one place to another place to sleep. Right. So that means they are not really kind of pleased, but their attachments. I want to be this. So like drug addictions, they know by taking this drug is harmful, but they kind of love to stay with that. They couldn't really separate from it. So kind of just addiction. It's not really, they are really happy. They couldn't let it go. So this like, if I let it go, I fall from the sky. So these people giving you the lessons, these people, without these people, having seen these people, having meeting these people, I think there's a less chance for you to improve, less chance to see the kind of the conditional suffering and origin of suffering. If you don't see the bad people, and you will just sit there and just morning you go out, have a coffee, sit under the tree, maybe in the sun. You don't think there's necessary to improve yourself, right? My happiness under the sun, in the sun. My happiness in the shade of the tree. So the more you see these people, how they have very much kind of, develop the skill and knowledge. But all this knowledge is kind of driven by the attachment. So Ramayan's story is to teach people, right? Don't just rely on knowledge and skill, right? So sometimes it's good to kind of reflect back on those old stories. So if you let one individual let go from your compassion, and there's no way you can achieve the Buddhahood. But that does not mean when you have a compassionate individual, that does not mean whatever he does, you just let him do. You can, anything that you can to stop him, but without losing compassion towards the individual. You can fight with him, you can debate with him.
Recognition.
Yeah. Have you heard the Ramayana story?
No, is that something we should read? It's not part of our American education.
Yeah, Ramayana. In India, this is very, very kind of too common. Everybody praise the Ram. And there's always, they celebrate kind of this Diwali. They celebrate, every year they celebrate Diwali. You know Diwali? Right.
Only the word I know. Most people don't even know the word.
What is the Diwali? So there's the India, they celebrate the one day they call Diwali is the light up the lamps, lighting.
Light offerings with candles.
Light offering, yeah, it's kind of like the candles and there's a oil kind of lamp. They celebrate. So this means Ram has defeated the Ravan. So a monster, Ravan is like a monster. He defeated that. And the one who is defeated, the Ravan, and he is very powerful, very harmful, and he has a lot of knowledge about like ultimate Ved Purans, Vedas. He's very knowledgeable, kind of scholar-like knowledgeable, and he has so much skill in like music and many things. And he just because he is so arrogant, that makes him so harmful. So arrogant because he's attached to what he knows. Every skill, every quality, he is so arrogant, so full of that. So that makes him kind of so, harmful people. So the Ram in the Diwali, that when the Ram killed him, when he falls on the ground, he was almost dying. And Ram sent his younger brother and go to him, just kind of sit down, on his feet, and you ask him, please give me some teaching from what you know before you die. The Ram sent his brother, and brother sit down and with respect. And Ravan has a lot of knowledge. He's very scholar-like knowledge, and he teaches some teaching. And because of that, the attitude, the kind of from the Ram, and Ravan was so moved by the Ram's attitude, and then that purifies whole negativities. Then he started to see the Ram as the Lord Vishnu. So that Ram killed Ravan, but at the same time, because of his behavior and attitude that purify his negativities, he liberated Ram's mind from the second existence. So he has so much compassion towards the Ravan right from the beginning. Even when he was going to kill him, he has still compassion. While he was dying, he has still compassion. So don't lose any compassion, right? Not just good person, even bad person. So 12 links with dependent origination with sense of endearment towards sentient beings. That generates the compassion, the great compassion here, the great compassion. So this compassion called a compassion with mere sentient beings. I think, you can also start with every day, for example, end of your day, like just before the bed, just before you go to sleep, and you reflect all your actions, verbals, and you think, these are all verbal and the physical action, what I said, what I did, what I thought, all related to the self-cherishing. So self-cherishing means to benefiting to individual. So interest is to benefit yourself. Interest is to bring more peace to yourself. Then you say all this action, physical, verbal, mental actions, has it any succeed in bringing or producing the benefit or to yourself or not? Because your actions all driven by the self-cherishing. Self-cherishing, there's no self-cherishing that want to harm yourself, right? Not defeating yourself, not harming yourself, not defaming yourself. Self-cherishing is something good things should happen to me. So that led to verbal and physical actions acted out, right? Now, and the after the business, one day business finished, then you calculate. So all these actions supposed to bring, well, mathematically, so more profit, more benefit. So did I succeed in bringing benefit to myself? Not. So if you do this continuously, and then you see, oh, so there's something I need to expand, right? To do the business is expand. I should see myself in large, not in small quantity, right? So as I mentioned earlier, the shopkeeper he stays same hour, he spends same hours. Another shopkeeper has many product, right? Morning, maybe 9 o'clock to the evening 9 o'clock or 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. They say, but the people who has less product has more worry, more concern, and people have more product has less worry comparatively, right? Less worry. So why? If this is happening, so if my mind is always kind of watching, kind of seeking the happiness, that self that only dwells in these 5 aggregates. So never related to the others or kind of other sentient beings. So how tiring all this in the administers, because this whole the people who's working for, or the mental consciousness working for self-grasping, they always have to stay in a very small space. So that's so tiring. So the grasping of self has changed. I can view myself with every sentient beings, all kind of sentient beings, right? So my existing of myself, that could, existing of myself, but depending on, all right, many peoples, many sentient beings, animal realms, hungry ghosts, how's a human being, God beings. So then all self-cherishing and other kind of self-guarding or self-benefiting, all have many bigger space to walk, to move around.
What do you mean? Bigger space to move around? Like that.
So I'm just kind of saying, suppose the self-grasping is the master, like Amazon. What is his name? Amazon boss, Basil. Self-grasping. Yeah. Then self-cherishing is his secretary, the main secretary, and self-benefiting, self-defending. So all these are employee. Right now, Because if the jet bezel stays in his own warehouse, he never go out. And the secretaries and all the employees have to stay in that space. So there too many people there and could not go outside. And that's very, very kind of uncomfortable. Just by in a similar way, our kind of the way of seeing, kind of viewing the self and the self-cherishing and self-defending, self-benefiting, all because the boss, the master, could not see the self outside of the five aggregates. Yeah, because the space is too small to go around. So if the self-grasping, the master, right, he see himself with countless sentient beings. Right? Sentient beings, yourself and the past and the future and their futures. And there's kind of every sentient being is related to yourself. So you see the self with so many, as a bigger space. And self-cherishing, not always kind of, cleaning up this body. So they want to clean up their room. They want to clean up their dogs and pets and outside and bigger. Some people have the attitude that when they think about washing the clothes, they always think of my t-shirt, my pant. They don't think about the bed sheet that need to be washed, or the floor need to be cleaned up. So in his mind, the concept of kind of laundry is pants and t-shirts. So it's too small, right? So once the kind of, through the dependent arising, we see the self, right, could arises by depending on every kind of sentient beings, right? Everybody's body, everybody's feeling, everybody's perceptions, everybody's, thoughts, the idea. At the same time, the self is totally absent in each aggregates. It absence and it arises dependently. Like a forest as a singular, it arises, but depending on the collection of the trees. The forest as a singular, that entity, that kind of entity, as a singular, is absent with each trees. Right? It absence with each trees. Each trees are the divide of that a forest as a singular, one entity. Divide, but this concept of forest, it arises by depending on each trees. So the similar myself that arises by depending upon this body, this feeling, this mental formation, this discrimination awareness, this eye consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness. Now, through kind of understanding of the dependent arising, I can also expand that my existing with others' body, others, right? Sentient beings with Heldra, sentient beings with the hungry ghost, sentient beings with animal, sentient beings with human being, sentient beings with God beings. Because we normally do that when it comes to my mothers. I exist with my mother, my sisters, and then you go with my phone, my computer. So if this is expandable with computer and socks and kitchen and the trees, why not? You can expand the existing self with animal beings, hungry ghost beings, hell beings. So people who find it's inexpandable, that means you are viewing the self concrete, solid, independent. The self is like a rainbow. It can expand. Right? Self is not like a pillar that kind of locate or kind of found to be located in the one particular place. So this all is like when you expand my car as sense of cherishing, taking care of the car, washing the car, waxing the car, right? Taking to the dealer, because you have expanded the self on car, right? So in this way, each sentient beings have been my mother. They've been kind to me, and they are the source of my happiness. Without them, there is no my my practice of generosity. There is no my morality and effort and the concentration as wisdom. Without them, there's no my successful. Right? So the sentient beings, you see that, then you say, oh, these are my sentient beings. So the self-cherishing goes up to that. When the self-cherishing is become so busy and he sees kind of the limitless things to taking care of, so then it's no longer call it self-cherishing, cherishing others. So he changed his attitude, and so he got changed the name. So I think this is the most important in Nagarjuna's Chandrakirti's text. Right from the beginning, he praises, making salutation to the compassion before the Buddha and the Bodhisattvas, Sharvaka and Pratika Buddha. So you want to make sure this is the most important. This is the seed of happiness. So we should more kind of, exercise, contemplate on this grasping of self and self-cherishing, how this works. Yeah, any questions to relate to this? Yeah, in this commentary, Chandrakirti's commentary on the Lama Tsongkapha's commentary on Chandrakirti's text. From the beginning, the few stanzas are all about generating compassion. So compassion is kind of, in this text, what we understand from this text is for the compassion, need and 12 links of dependent originations. Need to reflect on the 12 links of dependent origination. And then the additional, we need to generate sense of endearment towards the sentient beings. Combine these two, as a result, the compassion, great compassion. So, and also you can understand the 12 links of dependent originations is within the four noble truths, within the truth of suffering and truth of origin of suffering is that includes the 12 links of dependent origination. So truth of suffering, the origin of suffering. Truth of origin of suffering. Right? The in 12 links it says, Thangbu Jeba Gunyumos. From the 12 links, Thangbo means the first ignorance, the 8th, the craving, the 9th, grasping, are afflictive emotion. Nipa Chuba laid, second, from the 12 links and originations, second, the karma, and 10th, the process of becoming, are karma. So the out of ignorance, first karma, the second is the karma, and the karma that further lies by the craving and grasping, then the karma turn into a process of becoming. So in the wheel of Dharma, a wheel of life, you said it's a pregnant woman. There's a process of becoming. So Niva Juba Leniness, the second and the 10th are action or karma. And then Lama Duni, the rest, the 7th are affliction of birth, name and form, right? Name and form, faculties, contact, and feeling, and birth, and aging and death, and the consciousness, the 7. These are affliction of the, birth. So when you think about kind of truth of suffering, that includes the consciousness, name and form, and then faculties, the contact, the feeling, birth, aging and death. These are the conditional suffering. Conditional suffering. So the conditional suffering is kind of the origin of that conditional suffering is afflictive emotions. Right. Afflictive emotions, ignorance, craving, and grasping. So the origin of suffering means, so this is kind of, that produces the conditional suffering. Out of attachment produces the conditional suffering. And then not only that, the stronger the origin of suffering, stronger the attachment, stronger the suffering. And then you kunjung rabje, and so this is the source, right? Source of the conditional suffering is attachment. And the cause of this conditional suffering is the attachment. And attachments not only that always play as a root or origin, attachment also this is a leading, right? Because when you die, before the during the process of becoming for the next life, the attachment that guides this karma, this consciousness to the next life. The attachment says in the Paradu state, oh, there's a better looking for shelter, food. The attachment is that really that leading condition. So it's the condition, it's the origin, it is the source, it is the by increasing it, it increases the pain and suffering. So that's what it's called origin, right? So normally sometimes the origin always remains at the root, not comes with while it's developing. or at the end. So this attachment is play as a root and go with condition and lead the condition, suffering. So the attachment is very kind of, very, what do you call, it looks comfortable. This is like, looks comfortable, but kind of attachment, the flip side of attachment is always very unpleasant. And the surface, it looks very beautiful, comfortable. This is what they want. and the back of the flip of that is very angry, guarding, right? Uncomfortable, unpleasant. So attachment, detachments like that. Because you have attachment, so therefore unfavorables is inevitable. So when you are fixated in favorable object, unfavorable is inevitable with that. Is byproduct. Buy one, get one free. So that's so if you do, you cannot. You're gonna say, I don't want that. It has to go with that. So yeah, with these 12 links and divine originations, and then believing every sentient had been my mother's. So as a result, combining 12 links and the sense of endearment and generating the great compassion. So and then the sense of endearment as a true approach, true way of producing or generating sense of endearment towards other sentient beings. So now that's all about mere sentient beings, compassion towards mere sentient beings. Now compassion to mere phenomena, a mere non-referential. So homage to the compassion that takes phenomenal reality and takes no reference as its object. Then the Chandrakirti root text says, beings are like a reflection of the moon in the rippling, right? Rippling water, seeing them as fleeting and devoid of intrinsic nature. So this already explained kind of two kind of compassion. First compassion, beings are like a reflection of the moon in the rippling waters. So it means sentient beings, not like, I think yes, that still include the 12 links of divine originations, right? Sentient being in cycling and 12 links of divine originations. So these sentient beings and they're characterized with impermanent, moment by moment, it's changing, and due to the force of the karma and afflictions, right? The seeing sentient beings, moment by moment, change by the karma and afflictions. So that's one of the kind of the second compassion, the compassion with the phenomenal reality. So phenomenal reality. So this object and as kind of focal object and the aspect, so kind of reality of the aspect, two things. Like you say, by looking at For example, when we see, like, for example, the war, the soldiers, when you looking kind of focus, the focal object, the focused object is many army, individual army kind of stay together. And then by looking at using them as a focused object, and then create in your mind a soldier, right? A war, the singular, giving a singular name. When the aspect and the focus object is two different things, right? Looking at the many trees together, and then a forest, using a singular, giving a singular name to the aspect, right? So, so your focused objects is kind of many different types of tree. So a focused object. When you give the name a forest, a singular name, so that is not really kind of distincted in different types of tree. It's just singular. So like sentient beings is mere phenomenal reality means. Now the focused object is sentient beings. There are 5 aggregates. The 5 aggregates. So you are focusing on that, and these 5 aggregates in the expressions and in the expressions or mental level, moment by moment, changing by the force of the karma and afflictions. So that's the focus object. So that means there's 2 minds playing together, right? One is the wisdom that sees the 5 aggregates, that it changes in the within the mental level and the physical level. So both are changing, kind of, rapidly changing due to the force of the karma and the afflictions. And then kind of, for the compassions, this as my sentient beings, giving a name of sentient beings. So the aspect level is the sentient beings, and the focus level is the 5 aggregates. So, so this is what so phenomenal reality means. By focusing on 5 aggregates, and they are changing, and the changing that due to the force of the karma and afflictions. And then in the aspect level, aspect level, and the compassion saying sentient being, my sentient beings. There's so much changing that with kind of giving a name sentient beings. Like many trees together, giving one name, a forest. So that's what I call mere compassion with mere phenomenal reality. So, so beings are like a reflection of the moon in the ripples water. So why they use this moon with the kind of reflection of the moon in water? Because when you focus on the 5 aggregates, body, right, and the feeling, discrimination awareness, and the mental formations, and then 6 perceptions. So when you're focusing on that, they're changing, that you are kind of you're contemplating the changes in the 5 aggregates. You already know these are not sentient beings, right? These are not sentient beings, but by looking at it, I appear as the sentient being, right? So water, right? Just water, and the reflections that comes there, reflection of the moon, is not water, but because of looking at the water, you have reflection of the moon. The 5 aggregates is a totally absence with sentient beings, but focusing on them and come to your mind are the sentient beings. You have a reflection of the sentient beings with 5 aggregates. This is the compassion, so which means the second compassion with the compassion that's underpinned with the wisdom that understands no self-sufficient I, no permanent I. It's a compassion that underpinned with the wisdom that understands, realize the no permanent I. Anatma is already there, right? So because they're using that, beings are like reflection of the moon in the rippling water. So that's the, you can also say the compassion underpinned with wisdom, the kind of wisdom realizing impermanence of the 5 aggregates, right? So it's the compassion associated with wisdom that understand impermanence of the body, impermanence of the feeling, impermanence of the discrimination awareness, impermanence of the 6 perceptions. So the one part of the mind that realizing impermanence of each aggregates, the another kind of the mind that sees the sentient being with the 5 aggregates. So the every changes that you see, right, in the changes you see with sentient beings. And water that moves, ripples, right? The moving, the reflection of the moon, although there's no moon, but when you see the changes, ripples in the water, you also see the moon is also moving, right? So this compassion, this second compassion is like that. That's why this is compassion with mere phenomenal reality. And the third compassion in the stanzas, it says, seeing them as fleeting and devoid of intrinsic nature. Now, the second compassion, having seen the sentient beings with aggregates. So it's not denying, refuting the existing of the sentient being with 5 aggregates. Because you have, there's a kind of, there's appearance of the sentient beings with 5 aggregates. And so by kind of second compassion knows this 5 kind of sentient beings is no different from, there is no sentient being apart from the 5 aggregates. The second compassion knows sentient beings no apart from the 5 aggregates, no different from 5 aggregates, right? So this, with this mind, with this wisdom, and there's the appearance of the sentient being with 5 aggregates. So appearance of the sentient beings not proven to be mistaken. The third compassion is saying, seeing them as fleeting and devoid of intrinsic nature. That very reflection of the moon that sees within the water, that reflection itself, right, reflection itself does not truly exist there. Reflection is not there as the nature of the water. Reflection of the moon is not coming from some other places, not going to kind of some other places. It's not part of the water. Right? So, but still, undeniably, this appearance of the reflection of the moon is there. But knowing it is not the nature of the water, knowing it's not coming from somewhere else, knowing it's not going to somewhere else. So not coming from, like a moon is not coming here. So similarly, this third compassion, the changes, impermanence, And the reflections, like the moon in the water, the appearance of the sentient beings with 5 aggregates is not truly exists. Even that is not the nature of the 5 aggregates. Sentient being is not the nature of body, not the nature of the feeling, not the nature of discrimination awareness, the perceptions, and also sentient beings, not the nature of the kind of wind element, space element, water element, earth element. But still appears with 5 aggregates. So that kind of sentient beings, you have a compassion towards these sentient beings. So this compassion is totally free from emotional and attachment. And still it is a very, very genuine and spontaneous compassion. So non-referential, so-called non-referential compassion. So these are Buddha's compassion. So Buddha, when Buddha see us, Buddha see Tenzin Shera, right? Tenzin Shera is totally absent in his body, in his feeling, his discrimination awareness, his perceptions, his 5 elements, totally absent. Right? Totally absent. By depending on them, there's appearance of the Tenzin Shera. So that he finds so dear to him. That Tenzin so dear to him. Right? So when Tenzin died, how many body he changed? So Buddha, there's a sense of endearment. That kind of, dependent arising appearance of the sentient being. Yeah, so that's why, ordinary people, out of attachment, they are so sense of kind of caring. When you see the impermanence of the thing that you are so close and so dear to you, and you cry, you beat your chest. so the compassion with the phenomenal reality and non-referential compassions. Still, that person, although die with this body, he still exists with another body. There is a non-existing of that person. Like, this is like yesterday milk and today turned into yogurt. I don't cry for the milk is gone. Right? So when you plant the barley seed, and then when the sprout comes, right? And then you just dig the soil and you say, oh, I have put the soil and now it disappears. You don't, some people stupidly think that worry, oh, my seed has eaten or something. So plant is already coming up. So there's no loss of that seed, although it's not not findable as it before, but it's still, is not lost. So the Bodhisattvas, so they see the sentient beings is like a reflection of the moon. So there is no sentient beings become non-existing. Other people who cry when a loved one died, I think that's deep in their mind. There's so much belief. This person has to exist with this body. Now, this body is not moving, not talking to you. Now he is become non-existing. Then that really beats your chest. Yeah, then you find yourself drunk. This just be.
Nowhere else we say, I'm going to see them in heaven.
Yeah.
They're kind of holy. I'm going to see the same thing.
So every night when we sleep, we become non-existing. We are no longer the yesterday Saturday person. Today is Sunday, so tomorrow morning, so Mondays. So Mondays me, Sundays me is just become non-existing.
So in sleep, there's a weakening of identification with the aggregates, right? When you sleep,
Sleep.
when you fall asleep, you don't have the same, generally, you might have some attachment. If you have a dream someone is chasing you, for example, then you're still trying to hold on to a self. But there's other times in sleep, it's not such a personal thing. You're just observing, almost observing the dream without attachment. So the dream state, it seems usually there's kind of a weaker, the fixation isn't as strong on the aggregates.
So it's a kind of believing and grasping on the self that appears to your mind does it truly exist. The dream someone chased you and you believe in that appearance. I did something wrong. so you're chased by people, right? And then there's no way you can, as long as this beliefs remain with mind, this unpleasant, this worry never go away. So for you to be free from this worry, either you have to wake up or you need to know this is a dream. Right? Be awakened or knowing this untrue. So that makes you free from the worry. So in a similar way, the grasping the self, so knowing the self does not truly exist, it will kind of loosen up the concern, the worry, the fear. Or there is no self at all that exists within the five aggregates and the others five aggregates. So this is the only way to wake you up, wake your mind, yeah. So yeah, beings are like reflection of the moon in the rippling water, seeing them as a fleeting and devoid of intrinsic nature. To elucidate the compassion that takes phenomenal reality as an object, and also compassion that takes no reference as an object by means of their distinct object. Two lines beginning, right? The two lines beginning with word beings are presented here, right? Beings are like a reflection of the moon in the rippling water. Beings are presented here, reading this line as I will bow to the one who's seeing beings to be subject to moment by moment disintegration, moment by moment. So I will bow to the one who's seeing beings to be subject to moment by moment disintegrations. So that's the one thing, the second compassion. And as a fleeting like reflection of the moon in the rippling waters, strived, right, steered by wind, becomes the compassionate towards them is to pay homage to compassion that takes phenomenal reality as it object. So this is how the second compassion sees the sentient beings. Second compassion sees the sentient beings. There is no sentient beings apart from the five aggregates. So your whole focus in the five aggregates and your whole understanding is the changes that within the five aggregates, right? And so focusing on the five aggregates, seeing the changes within the five aggregates, and giving the name in your thought, my sentient beings. So you know, like looking at the many forests, many trees together, and giving a name, a forest, right? A Los Angeles forest, right? Or New York forest. We always give singular name, right? So similarly, this is so you see the sentient beings not independently exist. So that means you don't no longer have kind of believing the independent and permanent self, right? Because what makes you not believing in the independent permanent self, because you're constantly seeing the changes in the five aggregates, right? So this whole changes due to the force of the karma and afflictions. They continuously they change, constant changings. And then saying, my sentient beings, right? So this second compassion has negated the independent permanent I, but has not really proven mistaken this seeing the sentient beings with five aggregates. The third compassion is saying, even the sentient beings not within the five aggregates, are totally absent within the five aggregates. So how many times you empty within the five aggregates, but the appearance of the sentient beings is what do you call inevitable. You cannot be erased that, delete that. The appearance of the sentient beings. So this is like a reflection of the moon that's undeniably, unerasable, right? That exists. Although my mind whole understand this reflection of the moon is not the nature of the water, it's a totally absence. This reflection of the moon, reflection of the moon in the water, has not come from anywhere, not go to anywhere. It is never being part of water. Like your image of the face in the mirror, never part of a glass, never part of that shiny thing. Know where it come from, know where it go to. So this very nature of the appearance, although it is totally, absence intrinsically, but undeniably, this always appears. So that's my sentient beings, how they exist. So that's non-referential, right? You don't have the sentient beings to point out it's here. So non-referential.
That sounds like you're saying you're recognizing the phenomena as a mirage and dreamlike.
Yeah. Recognizing yourself as water like in the mirage. Recognizing yourself, the existing as like image of the face with mirror. And recognize the other two, right? Other sentient beings too. They're kind of exactly how they exist as water like in the mirage, a reflection of the moon in the water. So, and there's it kind of like it's not intrinsically, but conventionally. So not intrinsically means it cannot be locatable. There is no objectively groundable. It's not locatable, but it's undeniably, it appears.
The third example you gave was rainbow.
Yeah.
As a rainbow.
Your second rainbow or third rainbow? Rainbow with gun.
It depends on how you can count.
Yeah. So I think that's so some people may think because they haven't really so much exercise on the absence of intrinsic existence, then how come this sentient beings almost not exist, but the existing is undeniable. Almost not exist means if you examine, you cannot pinpoint. It's not objectively groundable, it's not locatable in any part of the five aggregates. But it exists. And then how come? How can you be so loving and so caring? That's kind of illusion-like sentient beings. So then you can, so it's a similar in the samsaric world. We are so, emotional about nation, country, community, and relations. These are all exactly like illusion phenomena. There is no, sense of relation, sense of government, sense of nations. These are all not locatable, not objectively groundable. So these are all made up to be existing by the thought with relation to the factors. So samsara is like that. Right? Now, the liberation means just simply understand as they are is the liberations. This is like you are dreaming, you are in a dream, and kind of as long as you're not knowing it's a dream, it's so uncomfortable, it's so so trapped. So the dream once in a short moment, and it's for a few minutes, you understand you are dreaming. And that really kind of relief that kind of mind from the the trapped or worry or fear. So liberation in samsara is just the matter of knowing, revealing yourself. If you understand yourself, you are liberated. So as long as you're not knowing yourself, you are in samsara. Just a matter of knowledge, right? Gaining knowledge is liberation. Not knowing is samsara. So samsara is not the place that you go, right? And liberation is not the place that you may go. If the liberation there is a place to go, there's rich people they're going to go to that. So maybe you cannot find a space for yourself. It's the good news. There's not really a place. Yeah.
I think I messed up with the mundane compassion and the third kind of compassion is almost like an absolute, liberated compassion. I can understand the mundane kind of, you see it's not real and all that. In my mind, I can see that. But I cannot see there's a compassion, the absolute compassion towards something. Your mind knows it's not real.
I think mundane.
I don't know how to,
I think the essence is the same. So that's why Solness says, seed of compassion from the birth we already have. So it means the compassion, the seed of that, essence of it is a sense of endearment, sense of close, someone who is close to your heart. Now, someone who is close to your heart, something that is close to your heart, maybe because of you are attached to it, or you know the nature of that things. The mundane's compassion is the same sense of endearment, but more that is driven by attachment, because she is my sister's friend, brother's kind of wife. So you have to kind of give a name, label to make him too closer to you. Sometimes if you if you have so much resentment to sister and brother, and by saying, here's my sister's son, you kind of making more, keeping him at more distance from you. Right? So, you have to give the name. So like sisters or brothers or mothers, my grandfathers, their children or something like that. And then something kind of seemed to be more closer to you. And then he smiled and then more little bit closer. And he kind of give a gift and more closer to you. And then he saves you, he protects you, he kind of benefits you. So, and then it becomes more closer and closer and closer. Right? So it's all because you have to give the reason, right? Something that has benefit to you, may benefit to you, will be benefiting to you. So you have to say that to bring closer to the heart. So here the compassion, the great compassion, Bodhisattva compassion is not like that. Because by knowing the nature of the suffering itself, right? By knowing the nature of the suffering itself, and this whole had been my relatives, and friends and sisters. And then the additional saying, all this so far my experience of the suffering is due to harming others. My experience of the happiness is all due to benefiting others. So the sentient beings are the source of your benefit, your happiness, your knowledge, your successes, right? So then this has to give, and then sentient beings becomes too close to your heart. So the dependent arisings need more exercise, right? So saying dependent arising, in the reality, there is no sentient beings, right? As a nature of the wind, no sentient beings, nature of the water, no sentient beings, nature of space. So how can you exist with space of your hollow in the body? How can you exist with the nature of the heat in the body? How can you exist as the nature of the wind in the body? How can you exist as the nature of the earth element, the solidity in the body? These are perishable. These never come, there has no previous life, no next life. So how can you be a nature of those things, the elements? If you are totally absent in these 5 elements, and how, so as a result of the outcome of element, like eye sense power, nose sense power, tongue sense power, you are also devoid and totally absent in eye sense power, nose sense power, tongue sense power, right? And the color, taste, tactility. So if you are totally absent in the sense power and object with sense power and the elements, and how can you be part of consciousness, eye consciousness, nose consciousness, the tongue consciousness, the body consciousness, mental consciousness? So you are totally absent in there. Right? But by depending upon this, the elements and the sense power and the consciousness, so something by the thought and constructed as a self, as a human being, as a male, as a female, as a teacher or a student, employee, employer, so giving so much name. This is how we make things existing. Right? So that making things existing is only in the mental construct, in the projection level. So what is the kind of, how we, how the negative emotion arises? So this is the thought and the factors together make things existing. So, and the existing of that thing is only you can make to be existing in the mental, within the mental projections or mental construct and the abstracts. This much you can make, right? Now, emotional, taking further, not just mentally, because in the projection level, not in the mental construct, they really exist out of your thought, right? So if the self that exists out of your thought, beyond your thought, then so how this self I exists with body. So me and my body, me as owner of this body that exists out of my thought and it independent from the body. So this self sometime, right, like this self in my body sometimes should be exist like car and a car driver. So people really think there is a me independent from the body. So this kind of the innate, the grasping itself, and philosophically, religiously, kind of, amplify, exaggerate, say, oh, this is called soul, this is called Atma. So you die, and this don't die. Your body buried in the soil, that you just remain. That independent soul will meet the God, will go to the hell realm. Right. So now the question is, this self has independent right from the beginning, or only independent after the death? If while you are alive, it is independent. Like, right? So car driver, if the car has a problem and he can drop the car at the dealership, right? And he can come back home, or he can, rent another car. So is there any possible you can physically separate yourself, leave the body, or right, leave the feeling, or you can change like the part of your bodies? So that means if you cannot find yourself being separable, right, from the body, from the feeling, from the discrimination, the awareness, from the 6 perceptions, so how can you remain independent after the death? without being died, but so you cannot be died, right? So you cannot be died, but your body died. So can you still do that while you're alive, without being sick? Your body is sick, but you're still not sick. But you can say, I don't need insurance, my body needs insurance. If you can remain, right, not sick, not bored, not afraid, right? So, but you have a feeling of fear, disturbs, uncomfortable, but you have the feelings of this there, but yourself not being, not uncomfortable. You're always remains free from those emotional. If you can find that, then for sure yourself is independent. If not, then your existing is projection. Your existing is made up to be existing by the thought with factors, right? So then you can make your existing with others' body. You can make existing of right now iPhone 12. Next year you can buy iPhone 13. You can existing with iPhone 13. Right? So if you can make like that, then why not? My existing with Hellrun being, my existing with the hungry ghost being, my existing with animals, my existing with God beings.
Did I understand it? Are you saying? I mean, it sounds like you're saying two things. On the one hand, you're saying it's a fiction to think like there's an Atma that can reassociate with another body. Right? Like there's a continuity or a permanent self that can do this.
Yeah, so Atma and kind of in the soul or independent I is lack of it. This kind of believing is showing the a lacking understanding the meaning of the continuation. So for them, there's something that continues. One things happen constantly, repeatedly. So they believe there's a thing that in order for it to continue, it has to be remain unchangeably.
Well, yeah, there's actually, so that's one thing. There's actually, seems like two other things. I can't even think remember both of them at the moment. The other is we can kind of playfully choose to exercise compassion without attachment. I'm saying playfully because we're not holding on with tension, in which we recognize birds or spirits as part of ourselves. Is kind of we can choose to do that as a way of kind of being more spacious, expanding ourselves, not seizing on the duality of myself as opposed to someone else. But there's some other. The third thing is that there actually is some kind of continuity. There's actually, it's not an independent self, but there is a continuity. I mean, the whole idea of tulku depends on that sense of continuity. As you were talking about this, by the way, there's many versions. I think it's Kamala Sheila who had the debate with its Han master,
I think with simple things, continuations, yogurt is the continuum of milk, right? And after kind of, from the yogurt, after taking the how's that? Taking out the butter, so their continuous is still there. And what we call chuku, I don't know, like, yeah. So yesterday milk, and today turned to yogurt, and then yogurt you just shake it, and then take the butter out, and become more liquid, more watery. So this whole continuum. So in that continuum, there is no one thing that is repeatedly happening. Right. So, barley to the sprout, sprout to the seed again. Again, there's another plants, the sprout and plants. And like, the rice thing says, like, so there's all continuum. The continuum does not mean there's no one thing is repeatedly happening. So why?
Again, that what do you mean? It doesn't mean there's not one thing that's, explain that, please. One thing that's.
Yeah, from the milk turning into yogurt. That yogurt is the continuum of the milk. So without being milk, it can be continuum of the milk. And the yogurt, again, take the butter, there's a watery, is also the continuum of the milk and yogurt, right? There is no milk continuously coming to it, kind of not happening, not existing with yogurt. The milk also not existing with the watery thing that kind of after taking up the butter. So you say this watery things and this milk, the yogurt, are continuum of the milk. So there's no you can see the milk with yogurt. There's no you can see the milk with the watery thing. But still you say it's a continuum of the milk, right? So the people confuse the continuum means this such thing that every day it should be happening. So that if this is not necessary, why isn't that, after the death of this life, after the end of this life, right? So the next life is the continuum of that person. Even the death is the continuum of that kind of the person. So death is not the end. Death is the beginning of another chapter. So another life is the continuum of that thing. So there is no need one things happen all the time. So this is kind of what they can see in the front of their eye. Things are continuing, but not the same thing happening. But about myself, if I continue, this person has to exist all the time. Is so stubborn and so stupid.
Geshe-la, can I try to, I'm still thinking about this three kind of compassion. I guess I can understand the first one is an ordinary sort of compassion with your mother, with your relative, with all animals. The second one is we see it as a changing, impermanent kind of, so it's the compassion I can say. The third one I have a hard time because we see this being is not intrinsic exist. But we still see that as a mundane world, there is that being, except it's not intrinsic exist. And that's why we have the compassion to this being. Is that correct?
Yeah. So intrinsic, inherent.
So it's still in the mundane
Yeah.
world to see
Yeah.
that.
Intrinsic, inherent, in here. It's like, so if myself intrinsically exists, myself should be in here, right? Inherent from the body, inherent from the feeling. So that means I should be exist in here with body. If I exist in here within the body, so which part, the upper part of the body, or the center part of the body, or lower part of the body? So, and if myself in here within the body, with air or with heat or with liquid, if none, and why I exist, or why I should exist in here with body? If I do not exist in here with every part of the elements in my body, right? So I do not exist inherently. So he's asking money. Just wait. Yeah, wait. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Chanchu simjo rinpoche, ma jeba na keju je, jeba nyamba meba, kone kondo peboshe, tonye tawa rinpoche, ma jeba na keju je, jeba nyamba meba, kone kondo peboshe, pama simjen tamjen dada dengi, nyenjo tamje tato tongwa, chanchu simbo, kona sushu, teta kunju monam drupju ruchi, kare raga kubishe, pendan dewa ma lunchunwe, jere simbo, tinze gyara, shabe side badu dengi ruchi.
May the precious holy mind of that Christ, may the permanent time of Christ, may the precious mind realize may the Lord have no decline but increase forevermore. In all these merits, may all the happiness we all know. Wherever the Bodhisattvas in the sacred areas of righteous mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. Power of Chandrakirti and Joseph.
Remain in this Lord Jesus. Thank you very much.